Hi everyone, it's William with the Grand Duke Dmitri YouTube series. We're doing diary entries from February 1940. I am back in my own home in the US, in Vancouver, US, not Canada, which is a suburb basically of Portland, Oregon, although it's on the north side of the Columbia River. I spent a few days in Seebach, a suburb of Zurich, and then went on to Issy-les-Moulineaux, a suburb in Paris, and then to Burien, a suburb outside of Seattle, and now I'm here in my own suburb. Thank you for being patient while I was in transit. Yeah, so what did we have last time? We talked about the 18th, 19th, and 20th of February, and I had a special guest, my friend Alfred Bruyere, who talked about the Winter War. He has quite a lot of expertise on the First and Second World Wars, even though he's a very young man. So that was a treat for me. I hope it was a treat for you. And oddly enough, in the next three diary entries that we're going to do, Dmitri is dropping the subject altogether. He's not talking about Finland in these three diary entries. I shouldn't have said altogether, because of course he will be resuming his comments on Finland and the Winter War, but in these three diaries entries he's preoccupied with some other things. So what was going on beside him talking about the beginning of the end in Finland and how dire the situation was there? The other thing that's going on was that there was bad weather, and so he wasn't sitting out on the balcony. It was too cold and it was snowing. I like sitting out there when it's snowing, but on the other hand, you really do have to wrap up, and you can't really read or anything because you have to wear thick gloves or put your hands under the blankets or whatever. So anyway, he wasn't sitting out on the balcony. And he was, however, socializing with the Maurers. So Gustav Maurer was the chief doctor and really the commanding officer of the sanatorium where Dmitri was staying, and so it was nice that they were able to maintain social relationships. He was invited to the Maurer's villa for dinner with some other friends and former patients of the Maurers. And then one of those friends, Reggie Poorbrick, departed. Dmitri seems to have enjoyed having Reggie around, but Reggie left. He was a British MP representing Liverpool, and he had to go back. It was wartime, but he left his wife behind, who was, like Dmitri, was very ill with tuberculosis, and she was not staying at Schatzalp. She was staying in a hotel. Whether or not that was a good idea, I couldn't say, but she and Dmitri died in the same year, around the same time. Okay, so let's start with the 21st of February 1914, a Tuesday. Weighed in the morning, didn't gain, didn't lose, 77.000, plus sign 0. Though I ate a great deal this week. Started feeling ill around evening and my bronchi hurt. Was given a compress of what seemed like hot oil. These surprises are unbearable. Called Giselle. Reggie left in the afternoon. Splendid weather, sun up to 49 degrees. Lay on my balcony in the sun. Spent the whole day there. Okay, that's interesting, because he told us in the past that he wasn't allowed to lay in the sun because the doctors at that time believed that direct sunlight could cause or trigger lung hemorrhages in tuberculous patients. But maybe the balconies are covered, as you saw while I was still there, and so maybe he wasn't in the direct sunlight. He says the sun, that it was up to 49 degrees. Does he mean Fahrenheit? I mean, 49 degrees is still quite chilly for somebody like Dmitri, who is sensitive to cold. 49 degrees in Celsius, of course, would be just unbearable heat. I don't know if you could survive it. So yeah, I'm not sure what the 49 degrees is in. So for a while he was gaining weight. Now he's still eating, but he's not gaining weight, but he's breaking even. He's not losing weight. He was feeling bad chest pain. They gave him this hot oil compress. Seemed like hot oil, he says, so they're not really telling him much about the treatment. These surprises are unbearable, no doubt. That was the nature of the disease. Okay, so let's go on to the 22nd of February, 1940, a Wednesday. Polly sent me a photo of Nicky and Aliki, triple exclamation point. Maurer in the morning. He didn't say anything. I hope I'm not worse. Got sick in the evening and was given a compress of hot oil. Bronchi painful. I have a feeling that something is the matter, but what I don't know. So he wrote that passage in English, which he often resorted to or used when he was feeling a little, I don't know, emotional about something. So he continues on, splendid weather, 50 degrees in the sun. Spent the whole day on my balcony, letter to Mimi, letter to Polly. So again, this strange temperature, 50 degrees. The interesting thing in this diary entry, of course, is that Polly sent him a photo of Nicholas II and Alexandra Fyodorovna, the former, well, the deceased emperor and empress of Russia before the revolution. And so this quite surprised Dmitri with these triple exclamation points. Unfortunately, he doesn't tell us what, if anything, Polly wrote about the photo. Maybe Polly just sent him the photo. Which maybe, you know, he saw it in a magazine or something and clipped it and sent it to his father. But it would be interesting to know if he sent any text along, and it raises the interesting question of, you know, what Dmitri had and other Russian emigres who were in Dmitri's employ before the divorce with Audrey and before Polly was sent to America, what they had talked about with Polly about Russian history and Nicholas and Alexandra. You know, again, we don't know if Dmitri was pleased by that or displeased. The impression is just that he was surprised. So I guess that's what the three exclamations points are. And it's interesting that he says Nicky and Aliki, not Uncle Nicky or Aunt Alex, like he called them mostly in his pre-revolutionary diary entries. I don't know why he went from Alex to Aliki. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, intriguing. So he sees Maurer. Maurer doesn't say anything. You know, he has a weekly checkup, but Maurer doesn't say anything in particular. I'm sure Maurer wasn't completely silent, but he didn't say anything one way or another. And that left Dmitri to worry about it. I hope I'm not worse. I have a feeling that something is the matter, but what, I don't know. So this is exactly why doctors should not do what Maurer did when Dmitri first arrived at the sanatorium, and Maurer told him, "Oh, you're doing great. You're great." And then within 2 weeks, Maurer had told him, "Phew, thank God you've recovered. You've made this extraordinary recovery, because when I saw you, I thought you were dying. I thought you would be dead very soon." So Maurer admitted to covering things up, to deceiving Dmitri, and now Dmitri is never again going to just believe the positive things that Maurer says when he says them. In this instance, he hasn't said anything positive. He just hasn't said anything. So I have a feeling that something is the matter, but I don't know what. I hope I'm not worse. And, you know, he was kind of a nervous type person, and I think it would have the same effect on me. I don't know if people are telling me the truth, and it causes a great deal of anxiety and anguish. Okay, 50 degrees this time in the sun. Spent the whole day on my balcony. That's my absolute favorite thing to do when I'm in Davos at Schatzalp. Wrote a letter to Mimi Polovtsov and a letter to Polly, perhaps referring or asking him about that picture of Nicholas and Alexandra. Okay, 23rd of February 1940, Thursday. Splendid weather, on my balcony in the morning. Lunch with Giselle in Davos. By 3 p.m. home and on my balcony. Every evening I end up getting sick these days. I feel hot, but my temperature is normal. Maurer says it's a gastric disorder. After dinner, cinema at the sanatorium. Nothing new, of course. I'm reading a very interesting book, Days of Our Years, by Van Posen, I think. It's a Dutch name. It's spelled Paassen. Okay, so, yeah, when make hay while the sun shines. He's out there enjoying the balcony. He, may not be doing well in the evening. He may be really worried about the state of his health, but he's still allowed to go into Davos and to come back 1 hour late for the mandatory rest period, which was supposed to be from 2 to 4 p.m. Dmitri usually when he goes down to lunch, he usually comes up at 3 p.m. Doesn't seem to be a problem. But then he gets sick in the evening. I feel hot, but my temperature is normal. So this would become a very frequent refrain for him. He wouldn't be allowed to go into town if he had a fever. He doesn't have a fever. They are taking his temperature, or he's doing it himself, traditionally 7 times a day. Maybe by 1940 they weren't doing it so many times. So they absolutely know that he doesn't have a fever. His temperature is normal, but he feels hot. And so I don't have the medical expertise to say what was going on with that. But it would really bedevil him. Maurer says it's a gastric disorder. So, okay, he seems to be taking what Maurer says as true. In this instance, it's a relief. It wouldn't necessarily be a relief because it wasn't at all uncommon as a complication of pulmonary tuberculosis for a person to develop intestinal tuberculosis, which is a horrible thing. But Maurer is saying, no, it's a gastric disorder. You have a sensitive stomach or something, nothing more. So Dmitri is satisfied with that for the moment. Then he refers to this book, and if you recall, Maria had sent him books from the U.S., and he had been waiting for them. And this one, Days of Our Years, was a bestseller, I think, 2 years in a row, 1938, 1939, and it's a sort of memoir of a Dutch journalist who became a Canadian journalist, and he had a lot, he was a lot involved. I don't have my glasses on. Days of Our Years, a bestseller in the United States for 2 years, the autobiography of globe-trotting Dutch-Canadian American journalist Pierre van Posen. Yeah. Okay, so that was the book. I didn't like it for some reason, and I bought it, and I took it to Schatzalp to read last year, and I found it, I don't know, I can't remember. I found it offensive for some reason. Yeah, I wish I could remember why. It's strange that I can't. But Dmitri obviously didn't have the same reaction. He writes that he says it's a very interesting book. It is an interesting book. If you happen to go to Schatzalp during the regular season, then you can look for it if you want to read it there, because I donated my copy to the hotel. Yeah, okay. So, a couple of things in summing this up. One would be that this was tough for Dmitri in a way that, isn't immediately apparent. These setbacks in his health when he's not feeling well, and right now it's pretty minor, he can still go down to town and so on and so forth, but if you recall in the letter he wrote to Maria, he put so much stock in the idea that his steps along the mystical path were providing him with the ability to recover quickly from this disease and to return to robust good health, and he counted on that. And at first he was exultant because it does seem like that he really did make rapid progress from being at death's door to being, able to get out and about. But things at this point, things start taking a downturn, and so he's not talking about the mystical path anymore. And I think it must have been particularly difficult for him because in a lot of the new thought sources that he used, the author sort of made it a point to say that people who die from diseases, that in a way it's their fault because they fill themselves with negative thoughts when they could be open to the infinite power of the universe. So that would have been, he doesn't mention it, but that would have been something I think that was particularly hard for Dmitri. Yeah. What else? The other thing is, I think maybe even these little health setbacks were maybe distracting him a little. This evening sickness with the pain and the compresses were maybe distracting him from a little bit from the winter war. Maybe not, because what do you do while you're lying in bed except listening to the radio? But anyway, he's not writing. He is writing letters, but he's not writing these big batches of letters like he was before, and he's not commenting on Finland. But I shouldn't speak with too much assurance about this being because of the way he's feeling, because he will be talking about Finland again. So in fact, in the next video, actually some interesting things will be occurring that are nice things. He'll be getting a new camera that he's thrilled about. He was an avid amateur photographer, and he'll be going on an outing to see a ski derby with one of the doctors, who obviously wouldn't let him do that if they truly thought that he was in danger, and then resuming talking about Finland. And yeah, so come back for that, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.